spoilers? Oh, lots and lots of spoilers.
Hello, everybody. I am the Lizard King. I can do anything. I'm a backdoor man, and please, won't you light my fire? Oh, dear.
Ah, yes, the pulse-pounding, throbbing appeal of Jim Morrison, completely and perfectly recreated for you folks here this week. No, not me, but in Oliver Stone's The Doors. Or was it? Maybe mine was better. And maybe pumpkins fly with the magic of Doug Henning. It's an illusion.
Only if you're in a really sincere pumpkin patch.
Wow. Major cross-referencing there. Okay.
Yep.
Welcome to this week's entry in the series Semi-Real People, the biopic story. An entry in what and who, you might ask? Glad you did. Right over there, captain of the Crystal Ship of Love is Matador Max Levine.
Arriba.
Which makes as much sense as a lot of other things. And I am the 7-mile snake, the fang of forecasting, M something Mike Loose. Together we are Max and Mike.
Yep.
We need a better band name.
Yeah, we do.
We need a band. We'll get back to The Doors in a moment, but first, we'd like to read out the answers to last week's poll question.
And that is, what is your favorite poll?
Wrong. We asked, what movie would you like to see remade, and, if possible, why? We got a couple answers here. Actually, we got 3. First up, we got The Wheeze, who says that, among other things, he'd really like to see a good version of Green Lantern. Who wouldn't?
That's a good point. I thought they were thinking of doing that, in this new DC Extended Universe thingy, that they were just going to go, Ryan Reynolds, who's that? And start over, but I haven't actually heard anything.
Yeah, but I think this Green Lantern gets his powers through heroin or something, It has to be dark and gritty, and it's like, by darkest night, by, darkest night,
you're thinking of
Green Lantern, there's the train,
lantern.
There's the train! I don't know what that means.
I think that's more White Line Lantern.
Having never seen heroin, I don't even know what color it is. Whatever. Anyway, he also suggests, quote, I've always felt that the Harry Potter movies, although they had a great fan following and made midnight movies a staple of the aughts, were a little shallow and didn't fully embrace the small nuances and spectacles of the Harry Potter world. They felt rushed. I would love to see it remade, but as an HBO series, which to me sounds like it means to be an adult series, which it's a kid. Well, anyway, I know
Harry Potter After Dark.
That's not your wand, Harry. Anyway, which is apparently...
think that's actually a really good point. I think that's a good idea. My problem with the movies were, if you've read the books, it's just annoying how much they leave out. And I think if you haven't read the books, the movies don't make much sense.
Well, he claims that it's apparently rumored to be in the planning stages, in which each book can be its own season, end quote. I think it's a great suggestion, and why not? That franchise, man, they haven't made enough money yet. I'm still hoping for the absolutely delicious animals and how to bake them, number 3 or 4 or whatever we're up to. Because I literally forgot the entire plot of the last movie.
It was a plot?
I think that's the one I went to see, and I just started laughing through the film because I literally had no idea what happened in the first and then the previous film, and then realized that it didn't matter. Okay.
Nope, really didn't.
Next up is Val, who is not at all related to me. She suggests, quote, if it could be done in a more traditional method of filmmaking, she means in this case not with CG aplenty or whatever, it might be fun to see a remake of The Maltese Falcon or even The Big Sleep. She says a coworker of hers who may or may not be a listener suggested Some Like It Hot. Whew, none of those choices would be controversial.
Some Like It Hot would be a little problematic, but well, I don't know. The Maltese Falcon, it's when you have those classics, it's hard to picture. The Big Sleep, I don't know. That just, some of those movies are so iconic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, they did that with Sabrina, which is a Humphrey Bogart film that they remade it with Harrison Ford, and it was in focus.
Yeah.
I remember it being in focus.
It was utterly it's not like it was bad, it was just utterly unnecessary.
Well, one of the things that didn't work was, let's face it, as much charisma as he had, Humphrey was not the handsomest man in the world.
No, he was not traditionally good looking.
And Harrison Ford is perfectly good looking. So Anyway. So anyway, thanks for that answer. And last up is Vince. Hello, Canada. He says,
Good
10
day.
years... Oh, good day. Yeah. 10 years ago or more, I had a ton of ideas. I wanted to be involved in a remake of the TV show Dark Shadows, UFO, and or Babylon 5, and thought that was a good time for a remake of the Day the Earth Stood Still or Godzilla as well. After seeing some of that happen, wow, seems like a mistake. Yeah. That said, I love silent films, and since they are almost unseen these days, and many are in such bad shape, they seem perfect fodder for remakes. A film called Pandora's Box, which I have not seen, for example, or take the plot of one of the lost silent films and bring it back to life, which I think is an interesting suggestion. The work of Méliès is basically untouched. Somebody did a From the Earth to the Moon a while back, but Méliès, most of his films were lost. But I think in some cases, the ones that actually have plots and don't just sit on silent slapstick, like the Keystone Cops, like why would you bother? There's a possibility, maybe.
It'd be really tricky. I mean, it would be a completely different movie with sound. It'd be less a remake and more of a complete recreation. But and a lot of them, the problem is some of them are kind of problematic. Like, if you wanted to do one of the Valentino ones of the Sheik of Araby or some such.
Or Birth of a Nation?
Oh, Lord.
Look it up, folks.
That's a really interesting idea. Well,
they did the Nosferatu film with
Klaus Kinski. That's
Klaus Kinski, yeah. So, so who knows?
It was actually really good. It's that one. That's one of the only Dracula movies that I actually thought was scary.
Well, of course, Klaus Kinski, who is by definition scary.
Yeah, he's got that sort of Willem Dafoe thing where he's scarier looking without the makeup.
Yeah, stop him before he Kinskis again. Do you have any films that you would like to see remade?
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of remakes in general. I like when they try to do something original. I do have to say I like the idea of redoing the Green Lantern film, as now, well, DC showed a brief moment where we thought they could do good movies, and now they're kind of kicking that out to the curb.
Well, they're making them longer.
I'm looking at you, Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, luckily I didn't have to. Because you did for me.
I did. Oh, boy. But, I actually don't really have one. Because, again, I'm not a big fan of the idea of the remake. I like the original films. What about you? You got a film you think could be remade?
All of the Star Wars prequels.
That's fair.
All of them.
Yep.
And I'd like somebody like the current crew on The Mandalorian who can tell a story and could actually give us a good reason why Anakin Skywalker turns into Darth Vader, as opposed to the I'm sad, I'm angry, okay, I'm going to kill everyone, whatever. And by the way, isn't it weird? I just saw this pointed out on a Facebook thing this week, that to prove once again that George did not have the whole series written out ahead of time, that scene in the beginning of the original Star Wars where Obi-Wan hands Luke the lightsaber that killed 30 children and said, your father wanted you to have this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I never thought of that. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. It every lightsaber has a name. This is Child Killer.
Yeah.
Yikes. God.
Honestly, I don't. Whatever. There's probably films, if I thought really hard, I'd say this was a really good idea. I wish somebody competent had made it. Barbed Wire.
Oh, come on. No one needed to make that film.
I think a film that really could benefit from another look. Rogue Warfare 3.
Well, I think they're going to handle that in Rogue Warfare 4. And then, of course, the entire Rogue Warfare series will be rebooted.
By the way, I think Fast and the Furious is literally going into space.
I think so. And they're bringing Helen Mirren.
Okay.
Helen Mirren apparently is in Fast, the 9th of this series.
I am really sorry to hear. Anyway, we're getting so far off topic. So,
Dame Helen, I hope they backed a lorry full of dosh up to your house. See, I speak English.
Real well, or goodly. So, we have a new poll question for this week. Mm-hmm. Which actor's presence in a film makes it a certainty that you will not be seeing that film? Yeah. Or conversely...
Yeah, is there when you're watching a movie preview and you go, hey, this looks pretty interesting, and then you see featuring and you go, nope.
Yep. Or conversely, is there an actor whose presence means you have to see that film? Like, is that still a thing? Please let us know in the usual ways, and we'll use your answers on next week's show. We will go over this at the end of the show, so you remember how to contact us, and thankfully everyone's been doing it properly, which I appreciate.
Yep. Thank you.
We have this film called The Doors.
The Doors.
The Doors, yeah. Oh, The Doors. And we have some trivia, which comes up now. The show. Trivia.
Still waiting.
It's coming. I need a pause. Budget, $32 million. Take, $34 million. So it made back its money. Everything's fine. Everyone's happy.
No wonder there wasn't a Doors 2.
I don't think there
I don't know.
Could be. Yeah.
Zombie Jim Morrison.
This probably doesn't come as a surprise, but if it does, Val Kilmer did most of his singing in the movie. It was so dead on, the surviving members of the Doors often couldn't tell the two apart. The way you can generally tell is that the close-ups of Kilmer as Morrison use his voice, shots further away use Morrison's. Ray Manzarek, who's the keyboard player, is not a fan and claims that the movie is not a good depiction of the band's history. Robbie Krieger, the guitarist and writer of Light My Fire, did give his consent, especially if it was shown that it was he who wrote the song and not Morrison. Drummer John Densmore was also in on the project. Billy Idol.
And rounds out the cast.
Yes, and the rest. Billy Idol, utterly unrecognizable as someone called Cat, was in a motorcycle accident prior to shooting, which is why he appears most of the time with real-life crutches. A little bit more method acting. Kilmer spent a year wandering around in Morrison's clothes. I didn't find out if that was his actual clothes or just the style. Going to places he frequented, and then, after shooting, had to seek psychiatric help to get the part of Jim out of his psyche.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's freaky. I did not know this. Mr. Mojo Risin, this is a term used very often in rock and roll songs, is an anagram of Jim Morrison.
Yeah, I remember that from some... dude, did you know that Mr. Mojo Risin is an anagram? Yeah, I remember that from some drunken college conversation.
I think everyone does.
Yeah.
Apparently the scene chosen for women to audition for the movie was one of the more graphic sex scenes.
Oh, dear.
And people have come out and said that Oliver Stone said, yeah, so this scene where you're naked and having to do that's what I want you to do as an audition. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Yeah.
That's why everyone loves Ollie.
This is a big contrast to the last film that Meg Ryan and Val Kilmer were in. Do you know what that film was?
Oh, wait. Meg Ryan and Val Kilmer. No, I don't.
Top Gun.
Oh, that's right.
This is very
I always forget
un-Top
she was Goose's wife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in the movie. I am pretty sure they're not in any scenes together.
Yeah, that's probably true. Interestingly, this came out the same year as another Oliver Stone film. Do you remember which film also came out this year?
91? Was that JFK?
It was.
Wow, there's a contrast.
Although that film was a little bit more back and to the left.
Yes.
Ooh, is it too soon?
It's too soon.
Okay. The car accident involving Native Americans that appears at the beginning of the film is something that Morrison himself recounted as having happened when he was a small child. Supposedly, a spirit of one of the victims entered him at the time. The Morrison family, however, claims that there never was such a bloody car wreck. It was literally just a fender bender, and nobody recalls anything that Jim talks about in that respect. Yeah. But he did like to tell that story. They did know that. He loved to tell that story.
Okay.
So guess what role of Val Kilmer's got Oliver Stone's attention and said, that's the guy I want to reach out and get to play Jim Morrison. Guess which film?
Top Secret.
Willow.
Oh, dear, really?
Mad Mardigan. That's my Jim Morrison.
Sure. Both known for their mad sword skills,
Yeah. Though it's true that Ed Sullivan's people did ask that the lyric of "Girl, we couldn't get much higher" be changed, and it is true that Morrison did sing the lyric as written, he didn't emphasize it, he didn't stick his face in the camera, they just sung it as originally recorded. And it's been reported both ways. One was that Morrison was actually really nervous and forgot. It's also been recorded that they all decided as a band that they weren't going to change it. So
I always like the story of afterwards, which I thought was in the movie, but isn't.
No.
When the executive producer is screaming at him, "You'll never do the Ed Sullivan Show again!" And Morrison just looked at him and said, "Man, we just did the Ed Sullivan Show."
Yeah, that is true. That's what I have for trivia. There's probably tons and tons more, especially who could have played him besides... I don't care.
Yeah.
Max, do you know any trivia about the movie?
I do know that some people objected to the portrayal of Jim Morrison as basically a drunken, borderline narcissist psychopath. Yeah. They said he was actually very funny and very warm and could be very nice. The thing is, as he sank deeper and deeper into various substances, he got harder and harder to deal with.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
It is uncanny how much Val Kilmer looks like him in this movie.
And we'll get to that, too. But let's move on to the plot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, I can't resist. You knew this was coming. Maybe a few people in the audience knew this was coming. I could make this very easy and just quote Dennis Leary and say, "I'm drunk, I'm known, I'm drunk, I'm famous, I'm drunk, I'm dead." But...
that was his sum up of Jim Morrison. Yep.
Yeah. For those unfamiliar with the movie, it goes something like this. New Mexico, 1949. A young Jim Morrison is driving to a new home with his family, and they witness a terrible car accident involving a truck of Native Americans, some of whom lie dead at the side of the road. Or was it? Next, it's 1964 in Venice Beach. Slightly less young Morrison follows fellow film student Ray Manzarek on the sands and confesses that he's written some songs. Impressed, Ray brings Jim to meet his friends Robbie and John. They rather quickly form a little band called The Doors. Through Morrison's sultry, sexy personality, the band quickly rises to fame, being discovered in the clubs of the Strip. From there, it's a whirlwind tour of fame through the lens of a whiskey bottle and acid. The band exists for only 4 years, with Morrison, barely managing to keep ahead of Jim's drunken, drugged outbursts. The only one who seems to understand him, tolerate him, leave, and come back to him is Pam, his muse. Oh, and there's another woman named Patricia, and some groupies. And, well, there was this summer of love. Finally, after being arrested on stage for lewd and drunken behavior, Jim takes a break to go live in France with Pam, perhaps to get his head together. Perhaps not. There he dies under still unknown circumstances. The Lizard King has ascended, and we are left Morrisonlessness. This is the end, my friend. Meet me in the back of the blue bus. The lowdown. And now onto the notes.
This is the beginning. The beginning of the podcast. The beginning
of the beginning. To sort of piggyback on what you were talking about with Morrison, yeah, one of the biggest objections was that we never see the smart Morrison, the well-read, because he was exceedingly well-read. Apparently there was one college professor, I believe, who was like looking at one of his book reports and like, no, I don't believe these books exist. They actually knew somebody who was going or had been to the Library of Congress and looked them up because there were these weird, like, 14th or 15th century books on Wicca or alternative religions, and found that they did exist. And because of the level of writing, they're like, I guess he read them. Also funny, doing a little research, I watched a Live at the Hollywood Bowl in 1968 concert, which is available on YouTube. You can go watch it. And in the opening song, which is When the Music's Over, there's a long silence, and then Morrison just walks up to the microphone and burps. And it's hilarious. He laughs, the audience laughs. It's really just funny. And it's like... I'm going to agree with that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that too, but it seems there was a lot more to Morrison than we saw. That being said, I don't necessarily believe that the depiction is wrong of that part of his life.
A lot of those aspects, the stuff he was doing in public, that's been reported on, the whole standing on the car in front of the crowd and screaming, "I am the Lizard King, I can do anything."
Right.
That's real, apparently, and he did set his house on fire.
That was listed as one of the events that was not corroborated.
Well, maybe it wasn't the closet with his girlfriend in it, but apparently he did end up burning a house down.
What I found out was that the violent outbursts as depicted in the film were apparently all fabricated, though everyone concerned agreed that Jim could have his moments. Those particular to the film, such as locking his girlfriend in the closet and setting on fire, brandishing a knife at her during a Thanksgiving celebration, and throwing a TV set at his bandmates during a recording session, those were all made up for the movie. Let's just go ahead and start right off. Val Kilmer, this is his performance. And there were other people that were originally, this was not his first pick for Morrison. There were other people that wanted to be, John Travolta was one of them. He kind of has the hair, I guess.
But break on through to the other side, my God. I can't see that. Just, no.
No. Tom Cruise, no.
Well, never mind that, Morrison, one of the things about it was how tall he was. Sorry.
Oh, dear, yes, well.
Yeah, I know, that's just mean.
And how not gay he was. Oh! We all know that Tom Cruise isn't gay because he told us so.
That's
Actually,
right.
I don't even know that there's ever any evidence about that. It was in a song. I literally don't think there was anybody else ever made to play Morrison as well as Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Especially the singing. I knew he sung in this, but I didn't know they used both of them. I can't tell them apart.
It's really hard to tell where one stops and the other starts. Not to mention, part of that is also because Morrison did perform drunk an awful lot. And his voice, the quality of his voice could change drastically.
Yeah. And especially towards the end of the career, apparently, those things were true, that he would often be late, sometimes missing planes to performances, or being too drunk to record and stuff. That being said, the dude had charisma. I mean, if you want a male white definition of the word charisma, there you go.
Yeah.
Because even just photos of him.
I've seen shots of him I've seen like interviews, and I've seen him on screen, and you cannot not look at him.
Yeah.
He just is incredibly magnetic.
Yeah. Kilmer just does a hands down amazing job. Even having watched that Live at Hollywood Bowl, the only thing I'll say is that we don't get to see that Morrison. And I've read through some of the comments. It's interesting because there were people who had been to that show or were commenting on it in the YouTube comments. And one person said, yeah, it's amazing how well he can do when he's totally whacked out on acid. And one of the other people said, some people go, I don't think you can be that good and be whacked out. And somebody says, you can see it start to hit in like one of the last songs. So he took it before the concert. But,
and he peaked toward the end, yeah.
And that's what they say, is he peaks towards the end. Here's the other thing that I think is just not really fair. The film's called The Doors. Not fair. It's not about the Doors. It's just not. We learn nothing about the other people. We do learn that a really bad wig on Kyle MacLachlan will look like a really bad wig on Kyle MacLachlan.
I'd seen this movie before. I didn't know. I'd forgotten that was Kyle MacLachlan as Ray Manzarek.
Me too. I forgot that Meg Ryan was in this film because talk about not a part. When I saw her name pop up, I'm like, Meg Ryan? Does she even drink? I don't think she does. And then she pops up as Pam, and I'm like, oh, this isn't going to go well. And it's like, she actually does fine.
She does. She does a great job.
Yeah,
it's an interesting contrast, I thought, to like Sid and Nancy, because you see these two people who are kind of locked in another codependent, destructive relationship, but they're not awful people.
No.
They're I never thought that Morrison, I think somebody described him as like a big child in the movie. And the way he's portrayed in the movie, he's kind of like a kid. He's based purely on impulse, but he's not a bad person. And neither is she. She's just, extremely vulnerable and suggestible, it seems.
Well, she also makes the mistake of assuming that somehow Jim Morrison's going to be faithful to her.
I don't. Yeah, that was a mistake.
Yeah, and we get into the woman Patricia. The woman Patricia in the film is a real person, although even Oliver Stone said, yeah, the portrayal is basically, I made her up.
Yeah, a journalist who's also a pagan, Wiccan.
That part's true.
Ah, okay.
The ceremony, that part's true.
They drinking human blood or mixing it with cocaine?
I don't know about that, but the Wicca ceremony, that apparently was true. And she really didn't like not only her own portrayal, she didn't like the fact that it showed that Morrison wasn't taking it seriously. She claims that he did. Other people claim that he doesn't remember that much of it, which I could see this either way.
Yeah.
It is also likely that if she did get pregnant, and I couldn't find this out, if she did get pregnant, that he freaked out and was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So, the people who play the band members, Robbie, John, and Jim, not Jim, Ray, they're fine, I guess. Although Kyle MacLachlan, that wig, no.
Yeah, and Frank Whaley and whoever it was who played John, they do a fine job.
Oh, it's Kevin Dillon.
Kevin Dillon, that's right.
Yeah.
But
who suffers from Matt Dillon syndrome in that he never quite makes it in Hollywood.
And yep, so close, but didn't really.
And he's a decent actor, so is Matt Dillon. It's just they never I never could understand why Matt Dillon didn't make it to the A-list, but he never did.
Yeah, that they're solid B-listers. But I got to say, maybe I'm just old and cranky. There's part of this movie that makes me feel like an old man. Mm-hmm. And that is listening to Morrison talk and listening to his read his poetry. All I can think is, you sound like such a pretentious douche. You sound like half the college sophomore conversations I ever heard when people would get stoned and sit around and basically go, how do you know? How do I know the color blue is to me is the same as it is to you?
Get a crayon box. Yeah, our old pal Dennis Miller.
Yeah.
I agree. And I actually, when I started listening to it, because apparently he would ad-lib that in concerts, it would be a different poem for those really long songs. My thought was, is this like a direct offshoot of beat poetry? And I think it was, because he really...
seems long. One of the things I thought when I hear him reading his poetry is, oh my God, you want to be Allen Ginsberg so bad!
Yeah, very much. Although Allen Ginsberg is problematic in his own special... Actually, the beat poets were. They were all horrible people.
Yeah, they were not nice people. But if you read Howl, it reads like a Doors song.
How will she ever forgive me? And that's, to me, especially some of the music, even, because beat music is very improvisational. It's sort of jazz-based, but sometimes it's just sort of it's all about the moment and the feeling. And a lot of Morrison's stuff is like that. Watching the concert, too, I think I can understand one of the reasons the band is upset as they are, because it looks like, it's a bunch of guys that Morrison found that decided to make a band, and they just got high all the time and stuff. The band's actually really good. And when you watch them, especially in concert, it's like they can't be on anything and be that good. Because they're improvised. They are. And all three of them, the keyboard player, the guitar player, and the drummer, they're all really good, and they're all really tuned in, not only to each other, but to Jim. So Jim is doing these improvised poems and stuff, and they know when to come in, and they know when he's going to start singing.
Follow him right along, absolutely. And that was the thing. I liked how they show that Light My Fire, well, first off, Morrison didn't write the lyrics, but it's kind of this collaborative creation.
Yep.
Where, Manzarek is like, hang on, I got to come up with an intro. And he comes up with that utterly memorable, down, that little keyboard bit.
I thought you were going to go into Bonanza. Yeah.
No, it's this great opening, and it's one of the most recognizable opening licks in rock music.
Yeah. Well, and I think up through the third or fourth album, all of the credits on the albums for the songs just said the Doors. Yep.
Yeah, they didn't start giving individual credit until after, for the last 2 or 3 albums.
There was at least another one of the really big songs that Robbie wrote the lyrics to as well. And that was one of his little things was, I'll be involved, but you have to show that I wrote lyrics, especially to Light My Fire.
Yeah.
Arguably their biggest and best known song.
Well, that was the one they did on Ed Sullivan.
It was.
Ed Sullivan.
I gotta say, this Ed Sullivan is a lot better than the last Ed Sullivan we had.
I guess, but he's still so clearly like, hello, I'm an Ed Sullivan impersonator, really big shoe.
Have you ever watched Ed Sullivan?
Yes, and he does look like that. Ed Sullivan looks like an Ed Sullivan impersonator. It's really unnerving.
He's a weird guy.
He was, well, apparently he was just a strange guy. I don't know much about him, but...
No.
I love him back there talking to them, going, fellas, how about going out with a big smile there? No, nobody wants to see you being sullen. And they're all just sitting there like this alien has appeared among them.
Well, here's a weird thing about Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan had arguably the most recent and most relevant rock acts of his day on his show that was watched Sunday nights by everybody. And I'm sure it's other people picking them going, you should have these people, you should have these people. But he had them on there. And
he did. He brought the Beatles to America. He gave us the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
All of these people, I would willing to bet he never listened to a note of their music. I'm sure he, when they were playing, he'd go backstage and put in earplugs or something.
Or he just put on a Mitch Miller record Lawrence Welk.
And they were right, by the way, they refer to, when he's asking to change the lyric. The Rolling Stones had the same thing with Let's Spend the Night Together, where they asked them, could you change it to Let's Spend Some Time Together?
Yeah.
And if you ever watch, I recommend watching the clip on the Ed Sullivan clip of them singing, because every time Mick sings the line, they try to pull the camera back, but you can see him just rolling his eyes. And it's like, yeah, I know. But let's face it, Mick was very pragmatic. He was like, yeah, I want to do the Ed Sullivan show because this will make our career.
Yeah. And, that among other things, also writing some decent ditties probably helped. But
there are one or two catchy numbers they did, yeah.
Yeah. Some of the things that the film is lacking, we have no idea where Jim comes from. And even that's something, to be fair, that Jim himself tried to propagate. He wanted to be mysterious. He claimed his parents had died. This is true. He actually did claim that. And there's that one scene where
they did eventually, but
not too long after he did.
Yeah.
He divorced himself from his siblings. But then there's that one scene where the journalist, I think it's Patricia, is like, "Oh yeah, I know who you are. Your father's he was the naval head of this, and you're everyone's still alive." And he's just like, "Don't do that." I don't know if that scene actually ever happened, but the film doesn't make any attempt to explain his upbringing. We literally do that one shot of him looking at the Native Americans, who then follow him through the film, and then he's Jim Morrison, so we don't know where he comes from.
I don't see that as a weakness of the film. I think that's part of what the point they were trying to make is that Morrison created himself, in effect. He just created himself out of whole cloth, and that may be one of his weaknesses. That's maybe the reason he died at the age of 27. Yeah, well, I mean, my God, he was a kid.
The weird thing is that's a big club. Right? That was a thing. So Janis Joplin died at 27. He died at 27.
Jimi Hendrix died young. Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix died at 27. Jean-Michel Basquiat would die at 27. Like, that age is like a thing. Pam would die at 20. No, she wouldn't. She died 3 years later.
Yeah, she outlived him by 3 whole years.
Yeah, she died okay. So that's the thing. His death, and that was something that Pam's parents insisted upon, that there was no way they could shed any light on her having been involved in any way, shape, or form with Jim Morrison's death. Now, it turns out there was no autopsy done because French law doesn't require one.
Yep.
So they just put him in a box and said he's dead.
Yeah, nobody really knows. I mean, they said it was heart failure.
Right. The likelihood is that it was an overdose of heroin, which he hadn't been into. And there's one scene in the film near the end where he's like, "Hey, could you get me some?" Yeah. And I think it's even Pam saying, "No, we're not going that route. You're not getting it."
No, that was that was one of the other guys. That was their producer. The band manager. He said, "No, I'm not going to get you that." No, stick with good, healthy cocaine.
Well, that wasn't even the thing. The big thing for Morrison apparently was booze.
Yeah, he was a big
acid
drinker.
I bet those two things go together well. It's like the milk and Pepsi of drugs, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't understand how they work, but my just thought was you don't need anything else if you're on acid, you know, but whatever. That was the whole thing. It was the thing of the late 60s. It was the new drug on the block.
Yeah. And
everyone was trying it.
It was the big counterculture drug. It was supposed to be, you know, everyone, they even refer to it. That's part of where the name of the band came from. Everyone was reading Aldous goddamn Huxley's Doors of Perception.
Well, yeah, but except that he was even quoting it from William Blake.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Which does seem like, if you've ever looked at The Art of William Blake, that looks very much like stuff that would suddenly become popular in the late 60s.
But Doors of Perception's all about, you know, altering levels of perception. There's a whole section in there about hallucinogens. And I read that. I got to say, Huxley makes it sound really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've had some friends who've had acid once or twice, and they luckily were not some of the people who had bad trips, and they enjoyed it. I don't know anybody who's still doing it. This was, you know, way back in the 80s. I've never had it. I don't even know what it looks like. Is it a color? I don't even know.
It can look like all sorts of things. Most famous is blotter acid, which looks basically like thick paper. And there was window pane acid, which are these little sort of clear gelatin tabs.
Window pane.
Yeah, there's all kinds. It can be, you know, liquid. It can be solid. I've never taken it either. I could never quite explain it, except when I was reading about it in biopsych, and I saw the parts of the brain it affects. It's like, no.
I'm going to need those.
Yeah, those are way too. And then I read somewhere, it was a great quote. I think it was in a webcomic, where someone said, "No, I know my subconscious, and I don't want to give it unfettered access to my audiovisual cortex." It's like, yeah, that's pretty. For me, that sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, I want to say one of the things that I thought was very well portrayed in this film was San Francisco, the Haight-Ashbury area. This footage that's supposed to be of him taking like home movie footage. It felt very real to me because I've seen some footage of the Summer of Love and later on of Woodstock and stuff like that. And yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, even the stuff when he's filming around Venice Beach. Yeah. That gave a real, you know, California in the 60s.
Well, you know, the funny thing about Venice Beach, because I've been there, it still looks like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, there's a lot more graffiti than there was as depicted there. But now, of course, I can't remember if weed is legal fully in California yet or not. But when I was there, it was just medicinal. So there's all these medicinal weed shops, you know, and right next to oh no, this is just smoking paraphernalia. It's for decoration next to those shops.
Right next to the cupcake shop, yeah.
You're smart.
I shout out to, probably you heard about this, when they legalized weed in Colorado, this Girl Scout set up her cookie stand right outside a dispensary. And I'm like, that kid is going to be the next Rockefeller. That kid is a genius.
Well, you realize that they don't actually make personal money from the cookies.
I know. But someone with that kind of business sense... Oh, the Girl Scouts will not be able to contain her. She will have a corporate titan one day.
See, I used to like there was a Girl Scout every year in Harvard Square who just ordered as much as she possibly could and then set up a table in front of the entrance, which is the subway in Harvard Square. And it's like, oh, who wouldn't hand a couple of bucks to a Girl Scout on the way to the T for a box of cookies? Heck yeah, you might be stuck in that red line train for an hour. You want something to eat.
Yep. You never know how long you'll be there without food.
Oh, and I worked in Harvard Square, so I just be out and about and say, oh yeah, I want heck yeah, give me Girl Scout cookies. And it's like, I still to this day don't know why they're not in supermarkets, because I would eschew every other brand, because I like the Girl Scouts. They're very inclusive and they're very forward thinking. Heck, I would buy Girl Scout cookies every week.
And they're good cookies.
Yeah, which has nothing to do with the Doors, but
nothing. But I bet the Doors liked cookies also.
Yeah. So all of the performances we see of the Doors are somewhat problematic. Something happens. The Whiskey A Go-Go show in the beginning, Jim goes a little too far. Everyone reacts badly, and they're basically kicked out. Of course, that's when they get picked up. Turns out they actually got picked up before they got kicked out of the Whiskey A Go-Go, but whatever. Like, that's so minor, it doesn't even matter. That's one of those tweaks to a story that is like, it makes a better narrative. It's fine. It's not like, oh, if they had depicted it the real way, we would have understood the true Jim. No, it doesn't matter. There's some great crowd scenes with some guest appearances that I was like, is that who I think it is? Do you know who I'm thinking of?
Paul Williams?
Yes!
Yeah. Andy Warhol's PR guy is played by Mr. Rainbow Connection himself, Paul Williams.
Now, to be fair, Paul Williams wrote a lot of hit songs.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
He was incredibly
Most
successful.
of which he didn't sing, which is a good thing.
And he was the voice of the Penguin on Batman the Animated Series.
Yes, he was. Which gets you immediate cred with us.
Oh, yeah.
Then we go to Crispin Glover as
Now,
Andy Warhol.
I gotta say, I thought that was really good casting because it's like, we have to portray one of the weirdest people in American history. Let's get one of the weirdest actors in American history.
The problem is he doesn't do a very good job of Andy Warhol.
No, he doesn't seem at all like any of the stuff. And because we know what Andy Warhol looked and sounded like, because
Right.
God knows there are enough interviews with him.
And one of the things they show him is like licking his lips like he wants to get in bed with Jim Morrison. Andy Warhol was not like that at all. I'm not saying he didn't have sex, but he was not leering, and he was very shy about that aspect of his personality. It's not that he didn't say he was, it's just that he was not known for lusting after people. He was actually came off as very shy and hard to approach, also exceedingly hard to interview. Because mostly he'd just be sort of staring behind his sunglasses and then ask you a totally unrelated question, so whatever. We get to see Nico. I don't remember who played Nico. And the Velvet Underground shows up there. We get a little Velvet Underground music in the background, which is cool because, of course, they're all part of that whole scene. I'm trying to think, who else did we get in there? Again, Billy Idol, if you don't know he's playing that character, because I knew he was in the film.
Yeah.
It's like, who's Cat? And I found out after the end of the film, it's like, oh, that was Billy. You will not recognize him.
No,
so
it's
I don't
really,
even know why
really
he's
hard.
there.
And I like little things like the fact that at one of their shows, the one that like Jim is really super late for, that's Barry Maguire, or it's supposed to be Barry Maguire, and his band out there singing Eve of Destruction.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, wow, Barry Maguire opening for the Doors. No.
I mean, it could have been worse. It could have been the new Christy Minstrel show.
I still like the agent who at the beginning of the movie is trying to convince them that they should do songs like Herman's Hermits. Come on, Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter. That's what people want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Doors do it? No. I never could figure out. It's like, I didn't know this, and I don't know why I didn't know this, but the one album I have of theirs is the first album, The Doors. The Doors. And it's got this song on it, and I'm like, what? This just doesn't sound like Morrison. Why is this here? This sounds like some weird German expressionistic. Oh, it is. It's Kurt Weill.
They show me the way to the next whiskey bar.
Yeah.
Which also gets really creepy if you listen to all the way through, because at the end it's show me the way to the next little girl.
Well, and of course, with Morrison having this thing for lots and lots of whiskey. Whatever.
Oh, yeah. Now that's a weird one.
And then we have this press conference, and Jim finds someone even freakier than he is, which is this made-up Pamela Keneally, I think her name is, or Patricia Keneally.
I thought you said she was a real person.
She is, but in the film, the way she's depicted, yeah.
There was another character who I'm like, you sound like a college student who just read her first book on neo-paganism.
Yeah.
Because all of that stuff she's spouting is, again, I don't know if it's fair because this is the 60s. This is when it was, in effect, a lot of people were discovering it. But they weren't the first to discover it. She's throwing around quotes from The Golden Bough and The Secret Order of the Golden Dawn, and that's way back.
Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and I know.
Yeah, I was waiting. Yeah, at one point in there, you're waiting for just one of the two of them chasing each other around the bedroom. I kept waiting for someone to yell, Avada Kedavra!
And see, this is why I kept feeling like the beat poetry thing, although there's never a connection made. I'm sitting there going, there has to be, because that's exactly the kind of stuff he's doing on stage. And that's, the whole, let's walk away from the expected, from the establishment, and, what's out there, man. It's all about the looking inside to look outward, man. And, it all just seemed to fit to me. And like you said, a lot of times when we get to college, we suddenly realize, hey, there's a world outside like the 7-Eleven. There's actually stuff out there people have thought about. Wow.
It's tough, though. And again, it's very hard to judge this objectively, because now so much of it sounds silly. A lot of that, yeah, man, doors of perception, man. Back then, for a lot of people, it was revelatory. It really was powerful and effective, and it changed a lot of the way they thought. Except so much of it, and this is one of the difficulties that people have argued about the whole hippie movement, a lot of it was very prepackaged. A lot of it was very Madison Ave, the clothes, the style, the music.
Well, and the stuff that, it even necessarily wasn't prepackaged, it became prepackaged. Like, they're like, how do we sell to these kids? I know, we just sell them what they're already buying, but we make it. Which is, and all of that stuff, like, it started showing, like, they even show a point where it turns out that they've sold Light My Fire to a Oldsmobile commercial.
I couldn't believe that. A car commercial doing a Light My Fire. To me, the worst of those it wasn't that long ago, was turning on and seeing a Mercedes-Benz commercial with Janis Joplin singing, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? I'm sorry, just something died in me at that moment.
I've been in the supermarket and they're playing the Ramones. I'm just like, what? What? No! I'm trying to figure out, do I want Chuck? Do I want London Broil? Beat on the brat, beat on the... Really? Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that it's a very bacchanalistic depiction of the 60s, because every concert that the Doors is shown having in this film, there's much less clothing than I think was actually at a lot of these concerts, especially the one in Miami 1969, where they're like, all right, we're going to arrest you on stage because you showed your genitalia. I don't know if you were paying attention, but it is plainly obvious that what we see is Val Kilmer's hand. Yeah. It's not actually genitalia.
And the guys in the band said, the real band said, no, he never did. He didn't flash them. He just tried to make it look that way.
Right.
Also, he did not have the distinction of being the first artist to be arrested for obscenity on stage. That honor went to Lenny Bruce.
But he wasn't a singer.
No.
I think pretty much every performance by Lenny Bruce could have been an arrest warrant, couldn't it?
Not really. He was careful a lot of the time. That one, it was one particular word.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you ever want to see the movie Lenny, that would be a good one for the biopic for this series, except it's so depressing I don't want to watch it again. But Dustin Hoffman does a really good job as him, and he does a great job recreating the routines he did. And he did one after he was arrested where he does a whole routine about the word he said, but without ever using the word. And as he says at the end, this is the dirtiest show I've ever done, and no one can touch me for it.
On purpose. That Miami show, 1969, so for those who don't know, this is the one where he's really blitzed out of his skull. It's impossible to tell if it was just booze or acid or what. And he is trying to incite the crowd. He doesn't, it's not even poetry. He's just, I can't remember if that's the one where he's actually saying, kill my dad and blank my mom, and
no, that was the club scene.
But he's telling people to do things. Let's see some of this. Come up and do that. And there's cops on the stage, and we see that fairly early on. The Doors shows are apparently these horrible Bacchanalia-esque things where there's orgies going on and there's bonfires in the middle of
throwing joints onto the stage.
Yeah. All I can tell you is I obviously have never been to a Doors concert. I would have been 3. But the one I watched, the one at the Hollywood Bowl, admittedly it's at the Hollywood Bowl, it's fine. Like, there's none of that. And in fact, Kilmer's performances were way wilder than anything in that show.
Yeah, in that show. But apparently he really was like almost animalistic in some of them.
But that's the problem. We don't see the shows that aren't like that. And this is, again, this is the thing that the band members were like, this is not the way it was. We don't see the actual really smart, well-read, funny Morrison. We only see the bad side. And he couldn't have been drunk all the time, or that none of this would have happened. I believe that he got worse to a point that he was basically unable to perform or to produce. But, it's kind of unfair, especially when you've got an actor that dedicated and that good. It would have been nice to see some not drunk Morrison, some creative Morrisons.
It would have been nice to see what it was that made so many people love him, not just the hedonists and the neo-bacchanalias, because he appealed to a lot of people. They were incredibly successful, and it's not as clear from this why they were.
And it's not just his looks. He was a handsome guy, don't get me wrong.
There were a lot of good-looking guys in rock and roll.
But he had a thing, and you don't... And Kilmer really nails it. For somebody who doesn't have that thing, he really nails it, because you're just watching him, and admittedly, sadly, part of it is you're watching to see how out of control he's going to get. But even when he's not, it's just like... You're just sort of hypnotized. I was, anyway. But we have some questions we'd like to get to, or at least I would like to get to.
Yeah.
Some these things. So, what do we know about Jim Morrison from this movie?
Well, we know some stuff. We know he was incredibly self-indulgent. We know he was incredibly charismatic. We know he was immensely pretentious. We get at least that. Again, we get a pretty good impression of a Jim Morrison. I don't know if it's the Jim Morrison or the real Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
But we do get a real idea of who this character is.
We know he's troubled. We don't know why. Like, why? He starts off on acid and decided this expands his mind. Okay, I get that. But why the booze? Why does he keep... Is it?
We don't always need that. You don't always need to know what the backstory is far enough back. You want to see who... This is about who he is. Who he is now.
And that's the thing, is that he is now... The booze was not there in the beginning, or at least not to the extent. What made him... he just drinks more. And I don't... Maybe it is just a case of he just got addicted and that was a thing. I don't know. The movie doesn't try. The movie is actually really interesting because it's very much, of the films we've watched so far, really more about a feeling than it is about facts. Even more so than the ones we've watched most recently, which tended to get away from the facts. Which comes to the next question, is how accurate is the depiction?
Well, we don't really know. We know a lot of the band members didn't think it was that accurate. I think it was accurate on some levels. I think it gave an accurate... I think that's how people saw him. I think it's sort of, that's... Oliver Stone shows us, this is the Jim Morrison you want to believe existed. I don't know how accurate it really is about what he was really like. But the thing is, he was around for such a short time. I mean, really, his career was only 4 years.
Yep.
These days, that's... this was before that was a lot.
Yeah.
But...
Well, I mean, hell, look at Weird Al. Weird Al's been doing his thing for over 30, which is unheard of. There are so many bands he has parodied that have come and gone,
disappeared.
And Al's still going.
Sure. But, I mean, you look at bands that made it 8, 10, 12 years. Of course, there were also the God knows how many one-hit wonders and,
sure,
flash in the pans. But considering how influential he was and how well-known, it's staggering to think he was around for such a short time. And I think this does a decent job of showing you, this is why. This is what he had that made him burn so bright and for such a short time.
What's interesting is when I did a little bit more research, most of the quote-unquote factual stuff, so like this show happened at this time and this is what happened during that show, most of that stuff's actually true. Like, him being arrested, him getting pepper sprayed, although it turns out it wasn't Patricia, it was a groupie. Yeah. But then, trying to incite the audience against the cops.
I got to say, I was really impressed. That was not pepper spray. That pepper spray didn't exist in 1967. It was mace.
Yeah.
He got sprayed in the face with mace and still went on and performed all I can figure is all the drugs gave him some kind of immunity, because mace you don't walk away from. Yeah. That is horrifying stuff. That can permanently blind you. There are people who have died from toxic shock from it. Mace is awful. That's why police don't use it anymore. It's illegal.
Yeah.
And he just shakes it off.
Well, he was the Lizard King. Yeah. He could do anything, except last to 1972. Oops. I have only experienced tear gas, so I can't tell anything about that. So I think that it overemphasizes a truthful aspect of Jim Morrison. Yeah. We miss out on a good chunk of what made him who he was, but I think that parts we see are true. It's just we're leaving out stuff that makes it untrue by omission. But yeah, the period of time, which, again, 4 years, 66 to 70, he moves to France in 71. I didn't know this. 2 more Doors albums came out without Morrison.
Yeah.
They tried, and they're like, okay. Yeah.
Not really. Yeah, not so much.
Do we feel we get to know the subject better after having watched this?
We get to know the one we see in the movie. Do we know the real Jim Morrison? I don't know. I don't, probably not. But we get to know more. I think we got to know more about him. Sure, I think we know something more than when I first saw it. I certainly walked out of it knowing more about him than I knew when I walked in.
And I don't know if this worked for you, but it did for me. Did the movie make you want to know more about the Doors in general?
It kind of did. It made me want to know, like, what I know some of their big songs, but what they put out a lot of songs, a fair number of albums, or 5. Some of the ones I don't know as many. I know as much. Yeah. And who was influenced? Who claims them as their influence? And there are a lot of people who do.
Yeah. Which I think is a good mark. If a film makes you curious, that's a good mark of a film, of a biopic especially.
Yeah, did it work that way for you?
Yeah, and I did. I went and did a bunch of research. I actually listened to, there was a live tape made at a club called The Matrix that they started at. It was one of the strip clubs. Not a strip club, but a club on the strip. And somebody actually recorded one of their live concerts. So this is before they were big, and it's all there. Like, they do things differently later on, but like, there's Light My Fire, and there's, all the songs that would become huge hits are all, and there's nobody in the audience. Nobody.
Huh.
So yeah, it was so yeah, I think so. Do you think Stone was passing judgment on Morrison? Because I think he actually really loves the Doors.
I don't think he was. I think he was more presenting him, because he does present him. There's a certain amount, you feel some sympathy for him. Mm-hmm. Here's this guy who's just clearly overwhelmed by this life, doesn't know how to handle it, never really grew up. It's hard to tell, because Oliver Stone can do many things. Subtle is not one of them.
He also loves his conspiracy theories.
Well, that's not so much he is not a subtle man.
He may be a Scientologist.
I still remember Natural Born Killers, which is a really well-done movie. But when I walked out, someone turned to me and said, well, what'd you think? I said, I felt like Oliver Stone was standing in front of me during the entire the whole movie, with brass knuckles, with the entire message of the movie etched on them, and was punching me in the face with them for 2.5 hours.
So what was the message?
Media perverts things. It makes bad people worse. I don't know. I've forgotten a lot of it. It was. It's an interesting movie. Oddly enough, a lot of it just sort of went out of my head.
So apparently, he didn't hit you hard enough.
I may have hit me too hard, because I think he damaged something.
He knocked a little BB out of the duck's eyeball.
Yeah.
We are fast approaching that point of the show. Do you have any other notes you wanted to get to before we get to the roundup?
Yeah, I don't get what the whole thing of going into the desert to take acid is. First off, Hunter S. Thompson did it better, and he did it before. But why? It seems to be this trope, not just in movies, but in real life. People want to go out in the desert and take acid. That just seems so dumb. Hi, I'm going to take something that messes with my judgment, screws up my perceptions, and I'm going to go into one of the most hostile environments on the planet that can kill me in literal hours and hang out.
Could have been worse. They could have done it in Australia.
Oh, yeah, well, in Australia, where you're never more than 10 feet from something that can kill you, yeah, that would have been worse. But so they're going, you know what's out in the desert? Scorpions. Lots of them.
Well, let's face it, they're in California. It's right there. They want to get lost in nature, man.
The one thing I did also want to mention is this was a kind of a waste of a really great performer, and that is Floyd Red Crow Westerman, who plays the old Indian who keeps appearing in his visions. Floyd Red Crow Westerman is so cool. If you ever see Dances with Wolves, he's Ten Bears, the chief.
Okay.
If you've ever seen a TV show or a movie with a Native American actor, that's him. He's in everything. And he has this great quiet presence, this great quiet charisma. And he is so cool, and I'm just kind of sorry to see him tossed aside. And the naked Indian on the horse, which I think his name is Wes Studi, that was, he plays in a movie I really enjoy, Mystery Men. He's the Sphinx.
Okay.
Whose superpower is that he's really, really mysterious. That's all I wanted to bring up.
Well, let's get to that part where we get to that part.
Yeah.
The roundup. So, Max.
Yeah.
Did you see this when it came out?
If I didn't, I saw it when it came out on video.
Oh, and what did you think of it?
When I first saw it, I was blown away. I thought first off, I knew more about the Doors back then. I was more into music back then. And I was amazed at how Val Kilmer just became Jim Morrison. I thought it was an incredible performance. I thought it was really cool.
And now?
Not as much. I don't.
So
think
what is it? What is it that makes it less cool?
Honestly, like I say, I'm older, and a lot of his stuff just sounds so self-important and pompous. And just about how look at how I understand the world in ways no one else does. And it's like, dude, you're quoting people who are a lot smarter than you were, who came before, and people have had these insights before, and you're acting like it's some kind of you are the revelation and you are the second coming. It just I found it more irritating, and the movie felt longer this time. It's not a short movie. It's like 2 hours, 20 minutes, but I still think it's well done. Again, Val Kilmer's performance is supernatural. A lot of the performances are really good. But I didn't like it as much. Didn't hold up as well for me. How about you?
That major complaint really seems to be more about Morrison himself than the movie.
I guess. It's maybe more of the dialogue and such, yeah. Okay. And the rest of just... We've seen a lot of look, rock and roll success destroys you with drugs and alcohol. We've seen that a lot.
Well, so, you did ask. When I came out of the film, I remember being blown away. I think the only reason I might not have been blown away this time is I'd already seen it, right? So and it's Kilmer. Kilmer kills it.
Yeah.
I like him. I liked him anyway before he became ridiculously hard to work with. But man, you look at Willow and this, or Real Genius, a film that I really like. And it's just like, maybe he can't bring that to every part, but what he brought to this part was nuts. And it's worth seeing just for him. It really is. And if you like Doors music, you can't tell the difference. It is not like last week at all, where it's like, yeah, it's not Johnny Cash. It is... the band didn't know. They didn't know. It is a shame that we don't see more of the band, because it's not the Doors, it's a movie about Morrison, and more or less about Pam. I kind of feel like, in a way, Stone was passing judgment, because we don't see the better parts of Morrison. And the thing is that we don't see rock and roll destroy Morrison. Morrison destroys himself. Because the whole, we don't see anything in the film that suggests that popularity was just going to his head. He didn't even seem to notice. He just wandered around. Even when they're at their peak, he's just wandering around shopping in places and just whatever. There's scenes where the crowd is being held back from him, but he's not really even reacting to it. I think the film is worth seeing, but I think it's also worth being a starting off point. If you don't know the Doors music, if that time period interests you, by all means, start looking at other stuff. Because the Doors they were not the typical band of their era. So we're talking 66, so the Beatles are still pretty much at their peak. The Rolling Stones, that kind of music, and the Doors are not the same thing. When you watch some of their live concerts, and there's at least one on YouTube, there's a lot of songs where they're like 15 minutes long, and it is this improvisational stuff, which admittedly at some points gets really annoying. But there's a lot of jazz influence, there's a lot of, I think, beat poetry influence, and I think the film does a really good job at giving you an introduction, saying, here, if you're interested in this, take a look now. Go look at other stuff. It doesn't tell you to go look, but you'll want to.
So it sounds like it held up for you.
I think it does. Again, we don't learn as much as we could, but yeah, I think it held up. But we have business to take care of, the least of which is, how do people get in touch with us? Well, we have an email address. You probably didn't know that. No, you probably did. Us at maxmikemovies.com, which is where you can send us your comments, your suggestions, your free tickets to Doors concerts, which you can't use. We also can take comments or answers to our poll question there, which this week is there an actor whose presence basically guarantees you will not be seeing that film? Or conversely, is it an actor out there that says, yes, I must see that film regardless of subject matter? So you can comment through our website as well, which is how most people are doing it. That is, of course, maxmikemovies.com, where we also happen to have, by pure coincidence, every single episode of Max and I going blah, 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 blah for the last 139 episodes plus specials. Mm-hmm. Leave comments there, listen to our episodes, listen to them again. They might have changed. You can find us on social media, such as Facebook and Twitter. You can find us on the podcast app of your choice, which you know how to do that. Otherwise, that's where we are right now, except for the big question that's on everybody's mind. What are we going to watch next week, Max?
Next week, we're going to go with another rock star. Yeah! Although, well, sort of. Not exactly a rock star of music, but a rock star of jurisprudence. Woo! Ah! And...
what?
Yeah. No, actually, we're going on this movie. It sounds really hot. It's called On the Basis of Sex. Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Let's see.
Who's it about?
I don't know. Hang on. I got to read the description.
Oh, boy, a porno. We're going to watch a porno.
It's actually about Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
We're going to watch a porno with Ruth Bader Ginsburg in it?
That can't be right. Hang on.
I don't want to watch a porno with Ruth Bader. I'm not going to watch a porno with Ruth Bader Ginsburg in it.
It's okay. You don't have to. No one's going to make you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're going to watch. Yeah, this isn't a musician, but RBG was definitely a rock star. And this is the biopic about her life and her working in the law industry and making her way all the way up to the Supreme Court. It's On the Basis of Sex.
From when she was a lowly sex worker until she was...
Sorry, no.
There's going to be porn in this. I just know it. It's going to be old lady porn, and I don't want to watch that.
There's not going to be porn. I'm almost sure of it.
Tune in next week to find out if Max is lying.
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.